All right. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Venture Mentality Podcast. I'm Jake O'Connor. Today we have 19-year-old entrepreneur Casey Adams joining us. His
What's
life
going on,
changed
man?
freshman year during football when he was diagnosed with interspinous ligament damage after taking a hard hit in practice. He was forced into a neck brace for the next 10 weeks. It was during these 10 weeks that his life changed forever. He invested in a Ty Lopez online course and started selling T-shirts to his friends and on social media. To generate more revenue, he decided to focus on building his brand, Rise of the Young. Rise of the Young is now a top 50 business podcast, as well as the title of Casey's first book. After being invited to California by Kale Maddox to speak at his branding seminar, Casey's career took off. He graduated high school from Richmond, Virginia, and moved out to Scottsdale, Arizona with his business partners. He travels the world interviewing some of those successful people while speaking at seminars and conferences. He's done all this, and he's only 19. What's up, Casey?
Dude, I appreciate the introduction, man. That was phenomenal. I'm looking forward to this show. I know that we've been talking for back and forth now, and like I said, I'm looking forward to it. So thanks so much for having me on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Casey, we have a lot of young entrepreneurs listening to this, and they're trying to start their own businesses, trying to build their own brands. What advice could you offer them?
Yeah, man, I think real quick then too, just to really start, I think the biggest thing about just being young nowadays, it's funny because I'm, like I said, 19 right now. And it's one of those things where 3 years ago when I was 16 years old, I got into this social media world, not really understanding where my path was going to lead, right? And I think that's a lot of young people, right? We get involved with something, whether that's sports and whether that's business, whatever it is, and you don't really expect the path looking forward, right? You maybe have goals, you maybe have these dreams, but things based on what I've been able to see and witness now, they always don't go perfectly according to plan, right? But in terms of just the direct question to start, like me 3 years ago when I was 16, I've always been an athlete my entire life, and it was at this moment where I was diagnosed with interspinous ligament damage while playing football that everything really took a turn for me, and I couldn't play football ever again. I was almost paralyzed, and I was in this neck brace that during these 10 weeks and then turned into 6 months, I was forced to think and have new habits and new routines. And that's where I really found a mentor, right? And I think the biggest thing for young people watching this show right now is if you're young and you can really analyze who you are spending your time with, that's the most critical thing you can do, because there's so many, where I come from in Richmond, Virginia, I didn't grow up with a family of entrepreneurs. Both my parents, they work normal jobs. My brothers, they went to college, dropped out. Now they're working at a restaurant, and they're hustling. They're doing their thing. But I understood that if I truly wanted to do things differently, I had to talk to different people that are actually building businesses, doing what they love. And I had to truly make sure my network was dialed in. So I think right off the bat, just to really start off this show, man, is like if you're young and listening to this, be careful with who you surround yourself with, because you are truly the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. And I'm sure a lot of us have heard that, but it is definitely a true statement. And after sitting down with hundreds of entrepreneurs that are running, whether that's $100 million a year companies or people that have tens of millions of followers online and anything in between, like they are very not careful, but meticulous on where they spend their time with people, because they understand the importance of that. So I would say, to answer the question directly, man, just be very careful and be aware of who you're surrounding yourself with. And if they're not helping you level up, chances are you should start finding new people to surround yourself with.
Yeah, man, they say that you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with, and that's definitely true. And just, I'm pretty similar to you in the aspect that, like, I didn't want a traditional job, and like, but my parents have traditional jobs and all that kind of stuff. So to see you at this age doing it, you're a year older than me. Like, I really look up to you, man. It's been awesome to follow your story.
I appreciate that, man.
So I got to know, what was it like moving out to Scottsdale, and how did that opportunity come to you?
Yeah, man. So Scottsdale, I've been here for about a year now. It's August as of recording this, and August 2019. And I moved out here September 25th, 2018 with my buddy Kieran and Jeff and Tristan and all my good friends back home in Virginia that I met 2.5 years ago on Instagram. But the main, I would say, reason I moved to Scottsdale was my 2 business partners, John and Josh. They lived out here in Scottsdale for the last 6 years, and we've been partnered on Build Your Empire for a little over a year and a half now. But the main intent moving out here was business partners, right? I had always asked myself now, I'm like, why did I move out here, right? But it goes down to like the opportunities that I was currently in the moment of were out here, and the people that I was currently doing business with and still do business with, they were out here. So it was more so like I didn't just wake up one day and say, hey, I love the desert. Let's go out there and live there, right? Like,
Yeah.
my goal, and still to this day, is to live in LA, whether that's in 6 months or a year or in 3 months, whatever it is. That is still one of my goals. But moving from, I graduated June 2018 in high school, and then moved 2 months later across the country by myself. I have no family out here. It's really taught me a lesson and I don't talk about this often because I think it's super important that I've learned over the past year of like, when you're truly like independently doing you, like you think and you actually have to form your own habits, right? Like for example, the last 3 years when I was running my business and going out and flying all over the country and interviewing people, like I would always go back home and go to school the next day. And like I was I was in that mentality for 2 years straight. That was how I was building, so that for me to really take it all left swing, move out across the country, I think there's a lesson to be told to everyone listening today. And that is truly like start being comfortable with getting uncomfortable. Like when I moved across the country, that was uncomfortable, right? Like, yeah, I had some friends that I was moving in with. Yeah, I had some business partners out here. But in terms of just like an entire new environment at 18 years old, doing you, independent, like you are responsible for so many things that you previously weren't. And I think for me, I know a lot of people young that are listening, I would say that's opened my eyes and helped me really get a grasp on like where is my future and what I've learned just life wise. But it's been a journey, man. You know, we're close to LA over here. We've done a lot of events out here, met a lot of great people, but it's definitely been a next step along my journey over the past year for sure.
Mm-hmm. Like I completely agree with what you're saying, and it's important for everyone listening to understand that you can't grow in the comfort zone. You have to take a step outside of there to get where you want to be. So personally, like I like to challenge myself every day. I like to seek discomfort. I take cold showers daily, and I see that change different aspects of my life. Like I feel better about my day. Like it just gets me in a different mindset. Like I can handle whatever comes my way. And so I think it's important for people to remember that. Now, with Build Your Empire, I know what that is, but for a lot of people listening, they may not know. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about that.
Yep. Yeah, man. So, I mean, so pretty much Build Your Empire. About a year and a half ago, me and two business partners, we acquired the brand. And previously to that, I was running a personal branding agency and running a lot of Facebook ads for local businesses in my community. That was like how I started first making money to travel and do my things in terms of like going to events and flying and buying plane tickets. I think that's something important to talk about. But in terms of Build Your Empire, I met my partner John Malat at an event I was hosting in Beverly Hills, and that was like September 2017. And it was one of those things where I've always followed this brand, Build Your Empire, on social media. They were always been a page previously to us acquiring it, but our whole goal to acquire it was to build out services and products, but most importantly, events that can truly change how entrepreneurs think about business by bringing in real advice by real entrepreneurs who are truly crushing it in their industries. So right now we're really focused on taking our events side of the business and bringing them into like mini modules, whether that's CBD or real estate or social media or accounting, whatever it is, like getting these world-class people to develop sort of like a Netflix series on our platform. So we want to overall create the Netflix of entrepreneurship and build out all these mini modules that people can learn from. And that's what we're doing. But on the front end, we've done a lot of big business events. We were in Germany recently, a couple months ago, did an event with a couple hundred people there. We've done a bunch in LA and Scottsdale and New York and done some in Miami. So it's really been for us building community. But the page itself on Instagram, we have a little over 1.5 million followers on there. And that's been something we've been able to build with. And it's been super cool. And yeah, I'm looking forward to everything we got going moving forward.
Man, that's awesome. I can't even imagine at this point because I'm just starting out, but you're years ahead of me. I can't imagine going to different places, speaking in Germany and stuff like that. That must be so cool.
Dude, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I've learned from it, man, because like, here's what I want people to understand too. Like 3 years ago when I was 15, 16, like obviously like a little bit younger than you, I didn't grow up ever traveling on an airplane. Like the first plane I flew on, I paid for it myself. And I didn't come from a family where we traveled or would go international. Like it was one of those transitions. Like for me, it's like, what are your goals? I think everyone, especially if they're young, my goal right when I started getting a client for social media or whatever it was when it comes to making money was like, all right, how can I travel? Right? Like you just said. And for me, it was, I'll tell a short story. So Caleb Maddox, I know that you mentioned this a little bit ago, he invited me to a speaking event in San Diego, California at the beginning of 2017. And it was one of those things where he was like, hey, brother, like come out. I saw like your Instagram and I know we've been talking for a while, like come out and speak. So I had to sell my dad on going out to San Diego for the weekend across the country from Virginia, which he's never been to California in his life. And I ended up buying a plane ticket for me and my dad, flying out to San Diego, speaking at this event for like 20 minutes. And then long story short, I get back. The day I get home, I ended up sending Tai Lopez a DM because Tai was one of those people that truly opened up my doors to self-development and like just personal growth overall when it comes to reading and all that sort of stuff. So I sent Tai a message on Instagram the day I got back. And maybe at the time I have a couple thousand followers on Instagram. I'm trying to start to build my personal brand, but I just sent him a DM and I say, hey, Tai, 8 months ago, I was in a neck brace, super depressed, not knowing what I wanted to do. And now I just spoke at this event with Caleb Maddox. I just wanted to say thank you so much for opening up my eyes to what's possible, right? And I sent him something important, an appreciation message, right? Like people always wonder, like, oh, when I reach out to people, how can I be valuable? Me reaching out to Tai and letting him know that, dude, just thank you in a genuine way, like that's valuable. That's why he puts out content, obviously to monetize and all these different things as well. But long story short, he hits me up like 20 minutes later and he's like, hey, bro, like tell me more about your story. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is crazy. Yeah. Long story short, 2 weeks later, Ty's flying me out to LA, me and my mom to his house. First time I'm ever in Los Angeles, puts us in a hotel, brings us to his house, shoots a bunch of videos, plugs me on Instagram and all this cool stuff. And once I saw that happen and like I lived it, I was like, wow, like there is opportunity here to meet people you follow that are your mentors, that like that is real, you know, because my goal was to travel. So then literally the entire rest of the year in 2017, I was dedicated to like skipping a weekend to school and booking a plane ticket to Los Angeles or going to an event because my network was starting to grow. And that's why I truly do what I still do to this day in terms of Tai always told me, he said, you can go to business events and you can throw them, but if you do both, your network will grow faster than you can ever imagine, right? So I started having these smaller events and bringing in different influencers I knew to have a networking party or whatever it is. And that scaled to now we're the point where I just partnered up with my buddy Drama from Young and Reckless, and we just did an event out in LA with like 500 people. We had Robert Greene and Paul Rodriguez from the X Games and all of these different people come and speak at this event. But it's people oriented, right? Like real quick, I always tell people my goal of social media is to take everything off social media, my relationships, the people in my life that I'm truly speaking with. Like going and meeting Tai Lopez in real life is way different than seeing him on Instagram. It's just like you have to truly hold yourself accountable, the way you carry yourself in terms of a successful person. Like there's so much differences between your social media personal brand and your real life brand and the way you carry yourself. So back to the point though, like when I started traveling, and to your point of like, hey, like, and I'm sure a lot of people are listening and like, hey, I want to travel. I want to speak somewhere. Maybe I want to build my brand. Like me 3 years ago, I was in the same place where I was in high school. I was playing sports. I was using social media as a way to connect with my local friends. And I didn't know what a personal brand was. And I didn't read a lot. And I didn't have any sort of network in the business world that for me, like looking back and even saying that sentence, it makes me think like, wow, like the foundations and the principles that I've used to get to where I am, like I can break them down and we will, but it goes down to like being truly committed, because I knew as soon as I flip the switch of like, this is what I want to do as a career and meet people and have events and build a business, that's when I knew I was all in, when there was no other option. And I think if you don't have that mentality, it's hard to even get these small wins.
You said the word mentality, and the podcast is called Venture Mentality because we adopt the same mindset as that kind of like the growth, like you got to go get it. And with your story and flying out to LA to speak with Caleb Maddox and meeting Tai Lopez, an important part of that was selling your parents. And I know that for a lot of kids like our age, it can be kind of difficult to sell our parents to let us do something outside of even their comfort zone. Like they want to protect us, we're their kids. So what would be your advice for kids trying to convince their parents to let them do things like this?
Yeah. I would say this is some really practical stuff too. So like for me, when I told you this before, like the hardest sale of mine was like convincing my parents to let me travel by myself, because I was 17 at the time, saying, hey, let me fly out to LA and go to this event and stay with my buddy in his apartment while I do that. And let me just be across the country by myself. Like, cool. And they would always tell me no. They didn't want me to miss my math test. They didn't want me to skip a day of school and miss all these days in terms of attendance. And the biggest thing that I would say is the turning point for me and my parents, and it's different for everyone, is like my parents, like as soon as I could show them real results. And for me, it might have been, hey, I can pay for my own ticket. I can book my own stuff. I can pay my own bills. Like in terms of when I started making money out by myself and actually like bringing in revenue, that's when my parents like, oh, like he's not asking us to fly him out, right? It's like I was an independent person that was paying for my own stuff and making my own decisions already, that they truly started to respect it, but I was also consistent with it, right? Like I always gave them a reason. And if that reason didn't work, I would give them another reason to let me go, right? And it was more so a game of sales. Like I love Grant Cardone's book, Sell or Be Sold, because every conversation you have in life is a sale. Like if you want to go on a Friday night to this football game or watch this game and your brother wants to watch this game, whatever game you end up watching, that person sold the other person, right? Like that's just at the end of the day. So for me, for my parents and I, it really came down to just providing real results for them to see and be like, oh, like you've talked to this person online and interviewed them, or oh, you booked an Airbnb already before you told us you were going, so now they feel obligated to let me go. Like the little things that you can sort of pinpoint and give yourself leverage for. But I don't want to say it's like, yeah, I had to sell my parents and I just bounced and they didn't let me go. Like they became very supportive and they always were. And I have a great support system back home. But it was one of those things where results spoke for themselves. But most importantly, I would meet, like, for example, when I got flown out to LA, my mom met this guy named Jaden Gross, who's a mentor of mine. And she met him. She talked to him. There was trust and relationship there that the first couple of times I went out there, he was there, right? So I think it was a networking game where my parents knew I was out there with someone they trusted, and that was sort of the fine line to start with, for sure.
Wow, man, that's really important. I'm glad you shared that. So when you're starting out on a podcast and you're finding people to interview, I know it can be very frustrating. It's very frustrating whenever they don't answer. But you've had a lot of success in getting the big names to respond. And I know you have a special way you go about this. So, like, what's your secret? How do you do it?
Yeah, man, a great question. So for those who don't know, I started my podcast December 24th, 2017. So it's almost been a full 2 years in December. It's almost literally only been like a year and a half, right? So the biggest thing for me is, like, I started my podcast. Yes, I wanted to do interviews, but I didn't start it with the intent of, hey, I want to interview hundreds of successful people and travel around the country. It was funny because I set up a meeting with Gary Vee, like, before I really started a podcast, and it was about social media, and I just wanted to chat with him and ask him questions. And I remember sending him a DM on Instagram, and it was when the K-Swiss dropped their Gary Vee collab, and I reached out to him after I got a pair of the shoes. I was like, yo, these are the best shoes I've ever worn. Like, these are amazing. He got back to me in the DMs, like, glad you like them. And then I was like, what would it take to get 5 minutes of your time in New York? And he was like, done. Hit up Tyler, set it up. Long story short, at that time, he was talking a lot about podcasting and the power of podcasting and interviewing and all that sort of stuff. And more so, like, every person that I follow on social media, I don't just follow them. Like, I truly try to understand why they do what they do. Like Gary Vee always says, he says, don't listen to me, follow what I'm doing. Like, don't follow me and listen to me like everyone else does. Watch what I'm doing and do that. So when I see Gary Vee sitting down with Russ and then T-Pain and then an athlete and then this person, like, his brand is building so much by those collaborations. So I was like, cool. I set a goal. I wanted to sit down and just talk to like 30 or 40 different people before I met with Gary. And this was like a 3-month period. So I just set a goal, literally this microphone that I'm using right here, the Blue Yeti, $100 microphone. I got that. And that's the microphone that I've used to interview anyone from my good friend when I first got started to Drama, to Grant Cardone, to Andy Frisella, and all these different people. But I would say for me, I didn't start with the big names. I think people always wonder, like, all right, how did you connect with Tanner Fox or Jake Paul or this person or that person or Ryan Blair or Gerard Adams or whoever? And I could go on and on and on. And I'm grateful and I'm blessed to say that I've been able to connect with these people, because I think it is a game of just communication skills, number one. But there's tactics and strategies that I think everyone should know. There's tactics, like, I'll break it down. Sending a DM, building a personal brand, being consistent. Those are tactical things you can do. It's consistency, like you and I going back and forth and just continuously hitting them up, but providing value and just being genuinely interested in having them on your show. If you're consistent enough, I'm sure people will get on it, right? Number two, building a personal brand. And I say that before sending DMs, because DMs is literally how I've gotten connected with every single person on my podcast. But it's because I had a personal brand, right? And I'll say it, right? When someone goes to my page now, it's like there's leverage, right? When, let's say, you're verified on Instagram, or you have 100,000 followers and you have good content with good people that they recognize. Like, I've built this brand now where I have a 90% more likelihood of getting people to say yes. But when I started, which is the most important part, I didn't have too many followers, a couple thousand. I wasn't verified. I didn't have any leverage. I didn't know anybody. But I started with the people that I already knew, people that I've already spoken with briefly, that were doing their thing, that were killing it. And once I interviewed 40 people in like a 70-day period, and then met with Gary and told him, hey, my goal was to interview 40 people before I met you. This is what I did. Now I interviewed Gary, and I put that audio on my show. Gary, whatever, he's a big name, and that definitely helped me get some traction. But honestly, the biggest thing, and I tell people all the time, like, DMing on Instagram is like my gateway to every single person, because there's no gatekeeper, right? Like, yes, someone could have a social media team, but you can truly get in someone's DMs for free any time of the day, 24/7. And one of the things too is, if you can go to your Instagram feed and go to your notification tab, you can swipe to the left and you can see who liked what pictures in that current time, 3 seconds ago, 9 seconds ago, 20 seconds ago, 20 minutes ago. And you can see if someone's like currently active on Instagram. And when they are, that's your best likelihood of sending them a DM right then and there, so they can actually read it if they are happening to check their DMs. But I think for me, it was just to kind of bring it back to tactical things. Number one, getting people on my show that weren't big names and that I already knew, so I could get my skin in the game. Number two, building a brand and documenting that, and actually investing the time, money, and effort to travel and meet people. So I already had that network of maybe someone knew somebody, or they could connect me with them or whatever. But building a brand and building a following, because that's how it's valuable. For me to sit down with Grant Cardone for 2 hours, this guy is he's managing $1.3 billion in assets in real estate. For him to sit down with me for 2 hours, you may be asking, right, what's the value? And it's because A, I have an audience that's young, and B, that's his audience. So if you just break it down in simplistic measures, cool. He says, I have a couple 100,000 followers and I have a top 200 business podcast. It's valuable, right? And Gary Vee says this all the time too. Like, people could get lucky. If you could send Grant Cardone a DM and just get started on your podcast, and he could be the first guest. Like, he's done that. So it's a game of, everyone may have different stories and experiences, but interviewing and podcasting, to me, this is why I do it. And I kind of want to wrap this point up with this. I interview people to bring them closer to me. This is my 4-step formula to build good relationships. Number one, invite them on my podcast. And I'll tell a story about, drama from Young and Reckless. Yeah. So I got drama on my podcast, Rise of the Young. And then when I was in LA, I told him that I wanted to do an in-person interview. So I went to his office and did another one. And that's 2 interactions with a person. Then I invited him to speak at my event in Phoenix, Arizona. That was my 3rd interaction. The first time he said no. The second time he flew out to Arizona, spoke at my event, loved it. And boom, then he said, hey, I want to have my own event. Let's partner up on this. Young and Reckless Build Your Empire, and throw an event together and become business partners. And like, that's why I do that, because the 2 things in your life that will change in the next 5 years are the people and the information you're taking in, right? So I understood, how can I get closer to people? And a podcast like you and I are doing right now, talking for an hour or however long this will go, we're talking, you're getting to know me, I'm getting to know you, and therefore we're connected, right? Or at least I will always recall this point where if you hit me up, I'm like, yeah, I did that podcast. I know him. We've done the show, and cool. All these other people, it's the same thing. Like when I spoke with Grant Cardone last weekend in Scottsdale in front of 1,000 people, we'll still talk about the first time that we met, when he like roasted me on me wearing earrings, right? And all these little funny things that we've been able to chat about now. But like, it comes down to just showing up and getting in people's faces. But the core strategy is build a personal brand that there's value on, and get your skin in the game with people you've already met with before you try to go after the big names, because they want to see that you've had you've done your craft, that you've perfected it, or that you've worked on it by getting out 50 episodes or 40 episodes before they commit to it. And that's just what I've seen in terms of after sitting down with a lot of people and even asking them straight up, like, hey, why'd you do this with me? Like, for example, and sorry to just rambling on, Jay Shetty, I was talking to him. Jay Shetty, I was at a spot in LA, and I asked him after we did the interview, and Jay Shetty has 5 million followers on Instagram. He's getting probably thousands of DMs a day. And I asked him, Jay, and this was off camera. I said, Jay, so why did you answer my DM and get on my show? Because you tend to not do them, I heard. He was like, yeah, I never do podcasts, but you were verified on Instagram, so I got back to you. And like little things like that, where it's just like, got it. Like when I heard that, it's like understanding that leverage point, right? Which everyone's like, oh, how do you do that? And it comes down to the PR and everything building up. But just little things like that I've been able to build my personal brand and get these different leverage points. Like hearing it from the big dogs, it sort of just lets you know, like, okay, building a personal brand is important because they want to use your audience in a healthy way and vice versa. So just to tie that together, I think it's just the core has been building a quality personal brand that people trust, people know, and maybe that, like, Grant Cardone knew that I interviewed 3 of his good friends, like Bradley and Andy Frisella and Ed Milet, before I interviewed him. So then I told him that, and he was more likely to say yes because I interviewed his friends. So those are just some of the little tactics that I've implemented that I tell people all the time. Like, yes, aim strong and shoot high for the big names, but start small and be consistent and just continue to do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's all about connections. Like my very first interview was with Emil Steenveld. He works out in Bali, Indonesia, with Joel Brown, who runs the Addicted to Success podcast. And I just got a message the other night that Joel and I are going to be doing an interview, but that happened because I was connected with Emil. So it's really important to be connected.
100%, man. 100%.
All right. So for anyone interested, where can we find you online if they want to reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, for me right now, the biggest things that I always want people to follow me on is definitely my personal Instagram, Casey Adams 1, and follow the podcast, is Rise of the Young on iTunes. But most importantly, like, this is necessarily like why I do what I do, and that is for the events. So like, for example, October 12th, 2019, I'm going to be in LA with Drama and Rob Dyrdek and all these cool people doing an event one day. It's $100 ticket, very low ticket, and like easy to get, right? There's a lot of masterminds that you spend $5,000, $2,000, $500. We're trying to go out from a low ticket angle to really provide opportunities with people that are truly just getting started. But me and Drama, the Young and Reckless event, that's something that I truly love, building relationships with people in person, because for me, that's what truly builds brand, right? If you have 500 people that follow you on social media, people look at that and they're just like, cool, like there's people with millions of followers. But if you have 500 people in a room listening to you, that's a completely different game. That's a completely different just atmosphere, right? And I think we always take this for granted because there's so many social media people that have millions of followers, but they can't sell 50 t-shirts or 100 t-shirts. And we've all heard the news from different sources about little things like that. So for me, the most important thing that I've really put my time and energy into is these events and bringing people together through my network, like Drama or Rob Dyrdek or whoever it is. So that's something that if people are listening before that time frame, definitely I'd recommend check that out and get there, because it's going to be a great time.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll put a link to that in the description so that people can get tickets and follow you and all that kind of stuff. But I like the point that you said about that. You basically said it's about connecting with people, not getting followers. So if you're looking to build a brand, it's not how many followers can I get, it's how many people can I get to connect with me and follow, like engage with what I'm doing.
Yep, 100%, man. Like literally, and I tell people to this day still, like I spend a lot of my time in my DMs planting seeds with people, responding to them, like sending them voice messages, saying what's up, and just reaching out to people that are reaching out to me, just to start that first interaction, because it's super important. Like when someone, like whether it's someone like Ty that responds to my DM, like those are the things that have changed my life. And however I can help somebody or truly like just make aware that I'm listening and I'm there to help in any way I can, like that's important to me. But I would say for people listening that this may be their first time hearing me or whatever it is, my goal is to just bring good people together through events and through content and through podcasts. That's the front end marketing to my brand, because for me, it opens up so many doors to people, like you said, and the people in my life will dictate the opportunities in my life, and the opportunities in my life will dictate my future, right? And that's the strategy that I recommend a lot of young people to follow, because if you are, yes, you could have the best idea, but if you don't have anyone to talk to it with that's has success with starting a company, running a company, selling a company, whatever it is, like you won't get ahead. And it's really good to just have those people in your life that you can speak to and ask questions to. And that's definitely something I'd recommend everyone really to just tie this together.
Man, that's awesome. That's been great advice. All right, Casey. So before you go, I've got one last question. It's kind of my end-all question. When you die, the only thing that matters is the difference that you made on this earth. With that being said, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to be remembered for?
Yeah, man, no, I love that question. I think it's something that when I've heard even on different podcasts, it's a deep question, right? And I believe we all have like an answer we shoot for, but I think it's different for everyone's timing in their life. Like, for example, I always think about this a lot because you never truly know when your last day is, right? Like, I'm 19 now, you're 18. And one of the things, I was at this mastermind, I was 15 years old, or 16. It was one of the first ones I went to in my hometown of Virginia. And this guy on stage says, let's figure out who's the youngest person in the room. And everyone started raising their hand. Boom, 26, boom, 25, boom, 20. I'm raising my hand. I'm like, 15. And everyone's laughing because they think it's funny. And they're like, oh, he has so much time to get ahead. But the guy, I remember the guy's name, Ralph Plum was his name. It was a Fortune Builders event. And he said, actually, you guys are all wrong. Him being 15 and you being 40, you don't know who has more time, right? Like, you don't know who has more of an opportunity and an advantage, because life, you could get cancer, you could get hit by a bus, like Jerry says, all these different things that for me, when I look at like, all right, when I die, what is my legacy? And I think for me in this 2019 era, like, this is history, right? Like the way we look at textbooks and we look at just like, oh, the people that first discovered these little pieces of technology, we're in that and we're living that. So for me, if I could just at the beginning, like if I died tomorrow, I would want to understand that every young person that has the opportunities in their hands today to truly take full advantage of it, because the fact that I've been able to live in my bedroom in Virginia on my iPhone to then connect with some of the world's most powerful people who are running $100 million companies and connected with, whether that's the presidents or whoever it is, like powerful people. I would like to tell my legacy to truly say, you're only one connection away. You're only one person away from changing your life. You never know the opportunities that you don't jump on, right? Like if I didn't book that flight to San Diego to meet Caleb Maddox, I wouldn't have met Ty and then my mentor, Jaden. So to really just summarize and go right to the point, don't miss opportunities that are presented to you if you feel it's right. Like everything that's happened in my life, I had a gut feeling and I've reacted. And I always get told that from all these successful people. And then it's like, when something feels right, chances are it is, right? When something, like when you walk into a room and it just feels shady, chances are it is, right? Or like, and we've all heard the different things, like when people get into a car accident, they're like, yeah, I felt weird that day, right? Or whatever it is. But like I said, I know I'm rambling on, but just me being 19 right now, I'd want every young person to know that truly not anything is possible. It's possible if you make it possible. If you truly set your mind to something, whether that's starting something like a podcast or running a company or meeting that one person or just being able to travel, like it's about your mentality that you carry on. Like people always tell me, and all my friends joke about it, like I'm a optimistic person. I always see the positive in things. And for me, that's super important to me. And that's something I don't want to leave with people coming after me once I die, because if you truly live in, this is my thoughts, in an optimistic being, yes, there's things that are sometimes negative. Yes, you could lose a family member. Like that is not a positive thing. But if you remain in an optimistic mindset and you understand that everything does happen for a reason, it happens for you, not to you, like my buddy David Meltzer says, like you'll truly start living with passion and purpose, just because you understand that everything that you cannot control, you should not worry about. And once you do that, you will have so much just blissful gratitude in that moment. And that's what I definitely want to leave people with.